When you're using Photoshop, you might want to add some text to your designs, and that's where the type tool comes in handy. Keep in mind that Photoshop isn't a desktop publishing program like Adobe InDesign, so you won't be able to create complex documents like brochures, books, or magazines. However, with all the creative options available in Photoshop, you can do a lot with type, whether it's for a t-shirt design, posters, flyers, book covers, 3D compositions, or website designs. Let's move to Photoshop. In this tutorial, we'll be focusing on the type tool, which is one of the most important tools in Photoshop. We'll start by discussing the basic principles of how it works, and then we'll create some examples together. The best way to learn is by doing, so I've created a worksheet to help you follow along with this video. To use it, you'll need to open the document I've prepared specially for this tutorial and make sure you've downloaded and installed the font correctly in Photoshop, so you can use them as we go along. To get started with the type exercise, you can download the project folder for free by clicking on the download link in the description. Once you have downloaded and opened the project folder, navigate to day 8, Type, and click on the Type folder. Inside, you will find instructions on how to install the required fonts. Once you have installed the fonts, open the Type exercise PSD file and you should see a file that looks like the one on my screen. Throughout this tutorial, I'll be mentioning some helpful keyboard shortcuts that you can use to make your workflow faster and more efficient. You can find a list of these shortcuts both in the description and in the shortcut key page in the project PDF, which you can also download from the description. Alright, let's dive into the character and paragraph panels in Photoshop. If you don't see these panels on your screen, no worries. Just go up to the window menu, scroll down and select them from the list. For this tutorial, I'm going to drag these panels out of my panel set, so it's easy for you to see what I'm doing. These two panels are used to modify type. As we create type, we'll be coming into these panels and tweaking the various options inside to get the effect we want. In my document here, you can see a variety of the type examples that can be created in Photoshop. And if we look over in the layers panel inside the example area folder, we can see that each of these type elements exist on their own layers. Now, pay attention to this. You will notice that in this document we have type layers. When you work with raster image layers, you'll see the familiar image thumbnail that exists next to the layer name in the layers panel. But when you create type layers, you'll notice instead of an image layer, we have a type icon. This icon is used to recognize a specific type of layer you have in your composition. As you build more complex documents with multiple layers, this will help you recognize the contents of your document at a glance. Let's take a closer look at the type tool in Photoshop. You can find the type tool towards the bottom of the menu, and it's represented by a T. Alternatively, you can use the keyboard shortcut T to activate the type tool. When the type tool is active, you'll notice that the mouse cursor changes depending on where it is located in the canvas area. Unlike image layers, you don't have to select a layer first before using the type tool. If you hover your mouse cursor over an area with no existing type, you'll see a small box with a vertical line inside. This indicates that you're ready to click and create a new type element in the canvas area. On the other hand, if you move your mouse cursor over an existing type element, the cursor will change to just a vertical line without the box around it. This means that you can click to edit the type. Once you click to edit the type, you'll enter the classic type editing mode. In this mode, you can use the type character type panel to make any necessary changes to the font size, leading, kerning, tracking, and other options. You can also use the control panel at the top for some common type options, but it doesn't offer as many options as in the character panel or paragraph panel. Keep in mind that when you're in the edit mode, you won't be able to use many keyboard shortcuts. If you press any keyboard shortcut that doesn't include the command key, the letter will be typed into the type element instead of executing the shortcut. To deselect the type, you can either select another tool from the menu, such as the Move tool, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Command D followed by an Enter. This will instantly deselect the type and exit the edit mode and activate the type tool again. Now that we've covered how to create and edit horizontal type, let's move on to vertical type. In Photoshop, you have the option to create type that goes down vertically instead of horizontally. To access this feature, I'll move my mouse cursor over to the first example of vertical type and click to select it. Unlike with horizontal tool, where you simply click to create a new element, with vertical type you'll need to go through an extra step to change the orientation. Once the type tool is selected, look up at the toolbar where you'll see a button labeled horizontal with an icon that looks like two lines stacked on top of each other. Click that button to toggle to vertical mode. With the vertical type tool selected, I'll click into the vertical type toolbox to activate it. Similar to horizontal type examples, we have a bounding box around the type that we can edit by clicking and dragging the squares on the edges. And just like before, we can use the character panel and control panel to make changes to the font, size, alignment and more. To deselect the type, we'll use the same keyboard shortcut as before. Press and hold Command and D, then press Enter. Now let's look at an interesting effect that we can use in Photoshop: the text in a circular shape. Currently in Photoshop we don't have a direct tool to do it, so we need to use a combination of shape and text. If you look carefully, we have here a blue line that is our shape. This is Photoshop telling that this line marks our base for text. If we select the type tool, we can click and edit text like in the other examples. But if I want to move the text around, I need to change to the pad selection tool right here, and you notice that some icons appear in the line. Now I can click and drag them to position the text, and if I want to put the text inside of the shape, I just need to drag inside. Okay, now that we know the basic principles of how type works in Photoshop, let's move on to create our own type file. So first I'll come over to the Layers panel and toggle away the example area, then toggle down the exercise area and click on the folder with no layers inside. To create type, we need to have the type tool active, which we can do by pressing T. Before clicking on the canvas area to start typing, we'll want to pay close attention to the character panel or control panel. This is where we can set the font and font size. We can choose the font by either clicking on the font drop-down option and selecting a font, or typing in the name of the font we want. In this case, I'll click on the font name and type Montserrat and set the font size to 50 by typing in the value and pressing Enter. Now I'll go ahead and click once in the canvas area to create a new type element. A type prompt will appear for me to type in some text. I'll go ahead and type in my text, and I'll notice that a new layer with the type tool icon is created in the Layers panel. Next, I'll make some changes to my type by selecting all of it with my mouse, coming into the character panel and tweaking the space between the letters or tracking. I can do this by either typing in a specific value or clicking and dragging on the tracking symbol. If I want to add more type underneath my first line, I'll click at the end of the first line to make sure the text prompt is at the end, and then press Enter to move to the next line. I can then type in my new text. To adjust the space between the lines or leading, I select all the type by pressing Command A and then click and drag on the leading icon in the character panel. To deselect the type, I'll press and hold Command D and press Enter. Finally, I'll press V to activate the Move tool and move the type into a better position. Okay, so right now we have this block of text that's aligned to the left, but let's change things up a little bit. First, I'll activate the type tool by pressing T key and then click on the text. To select all of it, I'll press Command A. Now, to change the alignment of the text, I'll need to look at the paragraph panel. There are a few alignment options here, but currently the left alignment is selected. If I want to align the text to the center, I can click on the center alignment icon here in the control panel at the top. Now that the text is centered, I'll deselect by pressing and holding Command and then pressing D. Then I'll activate the Move tool by pressing V and adjust the position of the text. Next, I'll click back into the Type tool and select all the text in the bottom row. Instead of going to the character panel, I'll adjust the font size using the control panel. I'll click into the value and type 30, then I will press Enter. To change the font, I'll type Arial into the font name box and select Arial Bold. Now let's adjust the tracking. For this, I'll come back to the character panel and increase the tracking by 800. This creates a big gap between the lines of text, but I can adjust this by selecting all the text with Command A and then adjust the leading in the character panel. Now let's talk about changing the color of the type on the top row. First, I'll select the type carefully, then I'll double click on the foreground color in the menu and pick red. You'll see the color of the selected type change, and once I'm happy with it, I'll deselect the type by holding Command and pressing D, following by an Enter. And here's an helpful tip. Let's say I want to make the entire type object smaller or bigger. All I have to do is press Command T to activate Free Transform. With the bounding box around, I'll use the command technique by holding Shift and keyboard and clicking and dragging one of the corner points to scale up it or down. Once I'm satisfied with the size, I'll press Enter and the type will adjust accordingly. Now that the type tool has been resized, let's say you want to create another type object in the same font and size. With the Move tool, hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and click and drag the original type object to quickly duplicate it. This will create a new layer in the Layers panel, which you can then modify by clicking into it with the Type tool and making with any necessary changes to the text. So that covers the basics of creating a new type element and adjusting the font size, alignment, leading and color. But what if you need to work with a large amount of text, such as a paragraph? In that case, there's an helpful technique to keep in mind. First, open the instructions document in the project folder and select all the copy in the example area. Then, with the text selected, press then Command C, a shortcut to copy it. Now return to Photoshop and with the Type tool active, click and drag to create a new text box. Upon release, you'll have a new text box with a type prompt ready for you to paste in the copied text. So, to start off, we're going to use the Type tool again, but this time we're going to click and drag to create a text box. As we drag, you'll see an outline appear, which is the shape of the text box we're creating. Once we release the mouse button, we have a new text button to work with. Before we start typing, we need to make sure our font settings are correct. So, in the character panel, we'll set the font to Montserrat, the font size to 7 points and the lettering to Auto. We'll set also the tracking to 0, the font color to black and the alignment to left in the paragraph panel. Once our font settings are set up, we can paste in our text by pressing Command V. This will paste the text we copied from the document we opened earlier into our new text box. If we need to adjust the width of the box, we can do so by clicking and dragging on the points around the bounding box. Now that we have our text in the box, we can apply all the same formatting functions as before. We can adjust the leading, tracking, alignment and color by selecting all the text and making changes in the character and paragraph panels. If we need to create a line break, we can simply click where we want to break and press Shift-Enter. To create a paragraph break, we just press Enter. Once we're done formatting our text, we can deselect it by pressing Command D and then press Enter. Then we can activate the Move tool by pressing V and move the text box to a better position. Now let's move on to the Vertical Type tool. To activate it, simply go to the menu, click and hold on the Type tool and select Vertical Type tool. It just works just like the Horizontal Type tool. To create a simple vertical type element, click once where you want to start and set up your font. For this example, I'll set the font to Montserrat, font size to 20 points, leading to auto and tracking to 0. Then start typing. Deselect the type by pressing and hold Command and D and then press Enter. To move the type into a better position, press V to activate the Move tool. To change the color of specific words, select the first word, come to the control panel and change the color to orange. Then select the last word and change it to green. If you want to change the size of the text quickly, press and hold Command D, then press Enter to deselect type, press Command T, and with the Transform tool bounding box, you can scale up and down swiftly. Now let's go back to the instructions document with the Vertical Type tool still active. Let's click and drag a type box. Set up your font first by setting it to Montserrat, font size to 7 points, leading to auto, tracking to 0, and color to dark purple. Then press V to paste the example type. For this example, select all the type and select Top Align in the control panel. And there you have it. Alright, so let's explore another awesome type effect that you can do it in Photoshop, creating a text in a circle. The thing is, Photoshop doesn't have a direct way to do this with the Type tool, as I mentioned before, but don't worry, by using a combination of two tools, the Shape tool and the Type tool, we can easily achieve this effect. So first we need to select the Ellipse Shape tool, then up here at the top we need to change the type to Path. Now using the Shape tool we're going to make a perfect circle, hold down the Shift key to ensure it's perfect. Next, select the Horizontal Text tool and hover over the circle line. You should notice that the cursor changes to a wavy line. Click when you see it and then type in your text. Once you're done, simply click on the check mark at the top and you're all set. If you want to make changes to your text, just select the Type tool and click on top of the text. And if you want to move the text, select the Path tool located right here, click in the center and move the text to where you want it. There are also these icons here that you can click on to rotate the text. Be sure to keep the cursor outside the circle to rotate it. If you drag it inside, the text will go inside the circle. And that's how you can create text in a circle using Photoshop. So those are the basics of the Type tool in Adobe Photoshop. Be sure to experiment with it and get comfortable with it. In the next video we will do some basic retouching. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.